Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. We have a lovely speaker here, ready for a fireside chat. His name is Dušan. Dušan is the Executive Director of Operations at PIBBSS, which stands for Principles of Intelligent Behavior in Biological and Social Systems, where he leads operational strategy for AI safety research initiatives. Um, and with a unique background spanning AI safety, education, and international business across Europe and Asia, he has successfully scaled multiple organizations from concept to implementation. A Harvard certified leader in educational management and former economics professor at Milan Business School, Dušan brings a systems thinking approach to operational excellence in AI safety organizations. He is also the co-founder of AI Safety Hub and Effective Altruism Serbia, where he applies his expertise in operations and community building to foster local AI safety research communities. In this talk, Dušan will share insights from his experience leading operations at PIBBSS, which is um, a world-renowned AI safety research and field building organization. Drawing from his work in scaling AI safety initiatives and building communities, he will discuss the unique challenges and opportunities in operations management within the AI safety field. Through an interactive fireside chat format, you will have the opportunity to ask questions and explore practical aspects of enabling and supporting AI safety research. I'm going to start off with some questions myself, but I just want to remind the audience that you could put in the live interaction section of Swapcard, you could put in questions under the questions tab. And I will be going through the questions based on like the highest number of upvotes first. I will have some questions ready to go first. So I'll start us off to warm up the crowd. Uh, but Dušan, over to you to introduce your work and PIBBSS as an organization.
Sure. Thanks too. So I'll give a little bit more of an introduction of myself. I've had about 10 years in operations of NGOs before. I've also taught at university for some 5-6 years. A lot of that work was happening in Shanghai, in China. And at that time, I decided to transition into AI safety. I thought that the useful thing would be, well, all this academic background that I have. And turns out, no, that's not what is most needed for AI safety at all. What is much more necessary is my operations experience that I brought. So yeah, today I'm happy to talk here a little bit about what operations is like in AI safety. I know some of you will want to transition into it. Some of you maybe are already doing it and want to see how to do it better. So the way that I would like today to go is that I spend as much time listening to your questions and answering them directly. What can I talk a little bit about? How operations are different in AI safety compared to working in operations in regular NGOs or corporates. I think the biggest difference is something like in a regular NGO, operations means doing a lot of legal, doing a lot of finance. That is the same. In AI safety, however, most of your focus is making research happen. And so, or if you're policy AI governance organization, then you're focusing on like making policy happen, right? And so you're much more connected with like things actually happening. That's what they call being the muscle of the organization. The other co-founders, they are the brain, they decide what needs to be done, and your job is just to make that happen as smoothly as possible. I think good operations is usually invisible, and no one comments on like a conference that goes without a hitch. But bad operations is very visible, right? And so like your job is to make operations seamless and happen without people noticing that they're happening, kind of thing. I think in a way, operations in AI safety looks a lot like operations in startups. You're doing a little bit of everything and whatever needs to be done. And your job will vary a lot based on the needs of your organization. I think also AI safety is about scaling. I think a lot of organizations start small with just like a few scientists. And then what we want to do is like make them grow as their kind of successes grow. And so like being able to scale and thinking about like 1, 3, 5 years ahead, that matters a lot for AI safety. What else did they want to say? Yeah, I think there's some necessary prerequisites kind of for doing operations really well in AI safety. That usually includes like good instincts on legal and finance matters, good strategy instincts. That usually comes with like experience. And if you don't have experience and can't find good traction in AI safety, my recommendation is like do operations either in tech corporates or startups. Both of those you will find like similar enough as proxies to the experience of working in AI safety. Um, and I think also one thing that ops people bring is a certain kind of grounding. Like the scientists that work in AI safety often think of very far things or abstract ideas. And having an ops person at a retreat, for example, or in a conference means having someone to ask who is like not in that subject matter. And you can give them like, this is what a relatively regular person would think of this. And so that is like a useful thing that we bring. It's also common for scientists who are young and passionate to burn out, and having the operations person go, you need to take a weekend off, you need to take your sick leave. That is where you bring value, right? Where you kind of help ground this passion in like making sure that people who work with you are healthy mentally and physically. Um, yeah, so these are like main things that come to mind. Let's now switch to questions.
Thank you, Dušan. All right. Thank you, Dušan. So the first question I have is, among the many things I could think about is, what are some of the key operational challenges you faced while scaling AI safety initiatives at PIBBSS, and how have you overcome them?
Interesting. Yeah. I think like main questions. Hmm. Uh, One thing is uh, PIBBSS, when I joined, was still quite small. They just finished the first year of running the fellowship, and we were going kind of from beta 0.5 version of the thing to like now standardizing and making things that can be replicated easily. Kind of when you're prototyping, you don't think about like, is this something that we will be able to like later do easily? You just think, let's get this done, right? And so like transitioning from this kind of like startup-y, prototype-y to like standardizing and having like these are things that are now solidly happening and that we plan to happen for the next X years was like first challenge. Second was, well, it was started as like a fiscal project. Do we still want to be fiscally sponsored? Where do we want to be fiscally sponsored? Um, do we open a separate org? What kind of org? And thinking, where is our strategic place in the whole alignment field? We are kind of like Mats, but not really. We're kind of like a research lab, but not really. And like figuring that out was kind of a strategic challenge at the very beginning. Recently, it's mostly stuff like fundraising. How do we like diversify fundraising, and how do we make sure that like we're not overly dependent on just one source? So these are like practical challenges that come up. I think there's a lot of like small things along the way, like make a retreat happen in far too short of a time, or change venues last minute because the venue had to change. But these are, I don't know, they come with the territory, I suppose.
Yeah, I saw in operations as well. I understand that that's a sentiment I can really relate to, where you have to juggle lots of hats and very tight deadlines. Curious, Dushan, if you have any like toolkits or like framings or frameworks, maybe there are like ways of thinking about operations or like excelling in your role that helps you overcome those specific challenges that you came across with PIBBSS.
So
Yeah,
specific frameworks
framings.
that,
I think it's yeah. Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if there is something like that. Like the job is so much changing day to day that it's always like rethink everything that you've done so far and come up with something new on the spot.
Yeah.
I suppose there's like heuristics, like make sure that you're doing weekly check-ins, even though you think there's no need. Um, you know, check mental state of all your coworkers, even if they say everything is fine. There are these like heuristics that you can do. Heuristic like don't let anyone plan an event for less than a month in advance, because you know it'll take longer than that, right? Even if they think you just run it, and you're like, no, there's actually a lot in the background, right? Um,
Yeah.
there's something about like make partnerships before you need them. So like for us, for example, having like a partner that can organize flights in a very speedy way
Mm.
means a lot. And we did it when we didn't need them, and then when we needed them, they were already kind of like set to go. So like think in advance, make those partnerships before you need them. That's like a good framework.
Mm.
But something like do SWOT analysis. I don't know, nothing like that I found
Mm.
actually works all the time.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, interestingly, is what matters is the thing gets done. Sometimes it's not all about like philosophizing or like strategizing
Uh,
the best way to cut a cake. What matters is cutting the cake and like getting it done in the next 3 minutes, something like that. That's what I'm hearing.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Dusan, would you I think many people have impressions of operations being like this, like you're behind X spreadsheets and Airtables and stuff, but in reality, it seems like, it's largely quite people facing. So I can, I my to my understanding, some people who do lots of operations also end up with doing, chief of staff kind of activities. Would you say that could you comment more about the people facing aspects of operations?
Yeah, I think in big enough organization, it's possible that operation ends up like far away in an office and just talks to other people who talk to the final people, right? But that's not where most of alignment groups are at yet. Like that's how Microsoft works, right? But that's not how Apollo works or something. Like we're still small, we're still very startup-y, and you cannot say that's not my job. I'm an operations person, I fill in the spreadsheets and that's my job. No, it's like you will notice some things are not working. You will notice there are like frictions in the system. And even though it's not specifically your job, maybe it's the founder's job, you kind of have to step up. Like, I think people who do operations in AI safety also like really care about AI going well, right? And so you can't just sit back and go, it'll be fine, someone else will do it. It's like, no, like, you know, we are working
Yeah.
on existential threats and you need to step up. And I think generally research attracts people who are like very focused on doing the work, but not always equipped with like soft skills of communicating their needs or communicating with other orgs or something. And so like
Yeah.
you sometimes have to come in and kind of like translate and help these things happen well, right? So like you need a marketing agency to do branding, and even though you're not the one coming up with the content, it's the scientists. You can help a lot because you understand them better than the marketers do.
Mm.
Kind of translate
Mm.
between
Mm.
them and the outside world.
Yeah, excellent, Dushai. I think what I'm hearing is there's a lot of like outsourcing. There's a lot of like being proactive. There's a lot of anticipating where to unblock someone's workflow, especially in the context of a research-heavy organization like PIBBSS.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing like again the threat of like are you the kind of person that can just get things done, especially under like uncertainty, because you don't have perfect information and you don't have all the time in the world, and you need to deliver and stuff. So I'm sensing that that's a threat there. Um, you know, in your experience, speaking of like dealing with researchers and working with lots of research facing uh, working in a research facing capacity, what are the most effective strategies for building and sustaining a community of like healthy researchers and practitioners in AI safety, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think field building in general is like very soft of a field, and it's hard to kind of like give practical advice that will always work or something. One thing that PIBBSS uniquely does is that we try to have very holistic community, such that like every PIBBSS summer fellowship has people from like philosophy and social sciences, and then a lot of hard sciences and like ML, and having all those people there all feel understood is hard. right? And you need to make like really welcoming places and really welcoming communities. And one, I don't know, thing that seems easy is like, well, just police everyone and tell everyone they're not allowed to like diss on anyone else's science or something. But that's not good, right? And so like making natural interactions that go well and softly introducing friction to each other, it's like a little bit of an art, not just kind of hard skill or science. And I think you kind of, as an operations person, you make containers where these interactions happen. So
Mm.
I don't know. One thing we do is like at every retreat, there are walk times. And these walk times are like you kick everyone out and they have an hour and a half to go for a walk. And in the beginning, like the first 1 or 2 days, we match people intentionally. We're like, oh, you should talk to this person on this topic, right? But by the end, you don't need to do that anymore. People get it. People know who they're excited to talk about and with and like connect with each other. And so you provide these containers, you provide the initial push, and then you work kind of like less and less hands-on as time
Yeah.
passes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that answered
Mhm.
the question or if you have sub
That,
questions.
yeah, sure, sure. I have a follow-up sub question on that. It sounds to me like I'm trying to think of so one of the follow-up questions I have is what are some concrete things that people can do um, to build up towards that expertise or like being excelling at operations. I imagine like my guess, and tell me your experience and tell me what you think from your hiring experience as well. If you've hired operations people, my sense is like the role has quite a customer service demand aspect to it. For example, liaising with stakeholders, coming up with a budget sheet, tracking the timeline, making sure things, event organizing or something. It feels like very customer facing as well, customer service facing. So the follow-up question here is like, what are some concrete things that people can do to build up this domain? How? Let me try. Sorry, trying to find the best phrasing. What are the best ways that someone can skill up in operations?
Right. Um, yeah, I suppose the specific thing is that like operations here is not like in a corporate, and so you can't just like finish a course on operations or something.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's good advice. Like be friendly. Like that's not actionable, right? But I think there are some like harder requirements. So like if you're based in US, UK, maybe now Canada, Europe, Australia, where like orgs are likely to open, Singapore, and Japan more and more. Um, Learn the local laws for opening NGOs and like managing them. These are like hard things that operations people need to know, right? And so like even though I'm not based there, I now need to know that because we're considering opening PIBBSS as like an entity in United Kingdom. So now I'm brushing up on the UK law. And like these are hard things. I'm outsourcing it, of course, to a lawyer, but that doesn't change it, right? There's a reason why like even if you're just a manager, you need to know accounting so that your accountant isn't like taking you for a ride or something. And so that brings you to the second thing, which is accounting. You need to know like basic accounting. You need to be able to like run your own books. Then you go ahead and outsource it. But you need to be able to like interpret and fill them in when needs come up. For soft stuff, it's like read very broadly so that you can have good conversations with all the different people your organization comes in touch with, I think is one advice. And if you can work on your people skills, like I very strongly believe that like people skills can be studied, and I come from that myself. I was like heavy introvert, I'm now heavy extrovert through like effort and studying. And so like I think that's feasible, and I think that's highly useful for like a good operations person that needs to be able to like communicate really clearly the needs of the org or like with stakeholders, as you said, like very customer facing kind of feeling.
Mm. Yeah, I'm also seeing the questions rolling in as well. So
Nice.
I think this was the same thread I was asking. Leslie was asking here, any other specific ways that ops generalists should upskill to be more impactful in AI safety ops, such as financial acumen, project management, etc. I know you try answering that, but I think that's a very huge curiosity for many people. So maybe the question I want to frame here is, tell me more about the trade-offs of building expertise and also retaining the generalist role that operations types are known for in the field. For example, you mentioned like building up local legal expertise for setting up an organization is like a very, very good thing to know or thing to have. Are there more such examples? And what are the trade-offs of like building expertise and being a journalist? Maybe not, they're not mutually exclusive.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like it's hard to say. Like it'll depend from org to org, right? Like PIBBSS is relatively small. We have like four or five full-time people depending, and then like a lot of contractors that come in over summer or something. And so like my job is different in summer and winter, let alone like if I'm in PIBBSS or I'm in maths, which is like much bigger and deals with much bigger budgets and like with completely like different kind of challenges, and then different if it's Apollo, who is in the UK and has like just researchers and stuff. So I think one thing is like that I haven't mentioned is be good at writing grants. If you are in a developed country that is likely to have government give out grants, see like get really acquainted with that and try to figure out what kind of grants are available in your country for AI safety. I think that's a thing that so far hasn't been done because governments have not been paying that much attention to AI safety. But I think like in the next 2-3 years, that's going to be like really important for operations people to know, okay, in my country, there is a grant that is like suitable for working on AI safety. Even if you're not a member of the org right now, I think if you find out, oh, I don't know, I'm in France, French government decided to start a new fund that we can apply for. Now start broadcasting that to AI safety people, find some scientists who need that, help connect them, and you will have done like huge impact. So one thing is like learn that. Another thing is like try to talk to people who work on alignment. I think one way is like conferences like these. Another is go to like Blackpool Hotel in Ciliar if you can, or visit hubs and like see what these people need. Like talk to them and see what skills they are lacking, and then try to build them up and make teams with them. Hackathons are also like a decent way to do this. This was a little bit all over the place, but so is ops.
Yeah.
I hope this is like usefully
Yeah.
covering all the different bases.
Yeah, yeah. A way I could think of framing this is like a Swiss Army knife, but
Right.
make sure that the Swiss Army knife works is like the point where
Mm.
being a journalist is sufficient. Like you don't want to be yes to being a Swiss Army knife, but when the moment counts where you need to be a scissors, like it better work or
Right,
something.
right, right, right. Yeah.
So that's probably my way of framing this. The next question we have is from Adam Turi. Adam asks, are you aware of any or at least fairly generalizable best practices or trainings, coaching resources in organizational best practices around HR and people operations? So again, best practices around HR and people operations. Any that you feel are quite useful?
I think like I have not finished any courses on this or anything like that. I have learned through working on this, so I cannot speak like that. I've done like an MBA like degree, and it was completely useless. So like I can tell you that probably isn't useful. I think it'll depend on your country. I think again, legal parts of HR depend from country to country, and you need to know them really, really well. I think it's not controversial to say that like FTX should have had better financial people working there full time. And like sure, creativity is great, but like the job of operations is to make sure that like the really crucial pivotal things go well. Um, yeah, no courses that I can like personally endorse, like, oh, this helped me a lot. Mostly it was like talk to other operations people is like the useful advice. So like mingle kind of horizontally, meet other operations people so that you can ask them questions when you have them. I think there's a lot of like broadly good advice, like listen to smarter people than yourself on YouTube or something, will already let you kind of through osmosis learn the most important things, such as like have a sexual harassment policy, right? Like very important. Many orgs don't do it by default if you don't tell them. So these kind of things I kind of picked up like that. I haven't seen any one course like, oh, finish this and that'll teach you everything you need or something. Sorry.
Yeah, for what it's worth, just from my personal experience, having worked with some operations professionals, and also my experience being an operations person at MATS, the books I could recommend, just quick shout outs. One, the highly underrated one is still like Charity Entrepreneurships, How to Start an Effective Nonprofit. That's like a no-brainer. People should just download that, go to the website. I think half of maybe like at least a quarter of the crowd is probably familiar with it. Yeah, but that sounds obvious. Do read the whole book. I think it's one of the best ones. Joey's and at L have very smart thoughts on that. Um, I think how to measure everything, but also specifically try to think of like how to assign probabilities and also scoping projects. That could be a good one as well. So hopefully that helps. Yeah. Um, Also, just because like I understand like there's a lot of people facing aspect to this. Maybe what was that one? Either nonviolent communications or uh, never mind. The other one is escaping me. Crucial
Carnegie's
conversation.
probably.
I was thinking crucial conversations.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
are yeah, probably good books. Something like crucial conversations better or something. Uh, for like improving your people skills and stuff. And discussion skills. So, looking at the next question we have, what has surprised you while working in AI operations? Something which challenged your preconceived notions?
Hmm. That's a very good question. I'm trying to think. Like there was a lot of unlearning happening in working in operations in AI safety for me. Like one part of my background was operations in corporates, another part was operations in NGOs, and they had to unlearn a lot of all of that to work in AI safety operations. I think the importance of truth seeking in AI safety operations is bar none in any other orgs, I think. And so the way that this is shown is like when you write a funding grant, you're not optimizing for optics, you're optimizing for truth. And that is such a hard thing if you've been working for like 10 years in corporates. It's like goes against all your instincts. You want to fluff everything up. You feel like everyone must be doing it. And it's like, no, this is not how we do things here. And I've seen like operations people who are transitioning into AI safety kind of struggle with it. Like they naturally switch to their marketing tongue when like pitching their org or something. And it's like, no, like tell what didn't work very honestly, because like the people making the decision are not evil and they also want to survive. And you want to give them like the honest information so they can make the best decision. And if the decision is we don't fund you, you have to trust that that is for a good reason. Like there were better other things, and we are in a better world because you didn't lie on your funding application. And counting that everyone else is also saying the truth is also something you cannot do in other things. And so like having to unlearn those instincts of like flourishing everything or like communicating all the good stuff that had to go, right? And that was like challenging for me. I had to like unlearn that and like get into this. It's super great once you get used. I love it. It's like not having to sin mentally or something. Like it doesn't weigh on my conscience like it would in my previous jobs.
Yeah,
But it is hard.
yeah. Uh, Man, Dushan, a follow-up question here is like, do you think that's a very open philanthropy, given that in the EA space, there's a very limited number of funders who are willing to back AI safety projects, who are value aligned, mission aligned. Do you think that it's quite specific of this like very scout mindset, truth seeking, like reasoning transparency way of communicating your where the status are things are? Do you think it's a very open field or like EAIF specific infrastructure fund specific approach to grant writing, or do you think in general, in your experience, it's a good thing to do, even with like grant makers that are not obviously EA within the EA community?
I don't have experience with that. So like currently all the funding comes from EA-ish, well, X-Risk, let's say X-Risk
Yeah,
funders, right?
yeah.
Um, we're now starting to see government grants come up, or like academic grants, or we're becoming eligible for EU Horizon grants or something like that. That's new for me. And like I cannot give advice for that. I think like it's a good norm to, with other AI safety orgs, communicate fully transparently, and that is great. And it's a good norm to do it with funders that you know
Mhm,
actually value that. If I
mhm,
was
mhm.
applying for like Samsung or something, I would
Yeah.
assume that's like something I would lose. I don't know if I would still bend my like epistemics or communication. Maybe if I was really desperate, but
Mhm,
hmm, that's a tough question. I don't know. I don't know what's the right
mhm,
way. I would like
mhm,
still value saying the truth and hope
mhm.
that it would like dig through the corporate speak um, by the
Yeah.
virtue of it being honest makes you stand
Mhm.
out. So, but I don't know. That's a gamble that I would take for myself. I can't advise other people to take the same gamble.
Yeah. And for additional context for folks who are unfamiliar, there is some sort of adversarial relationship when if you're trained like in corporate speak and you have to, apply to funding source, you're again trying to you're encouraged to like fluff things up. That often backfires at least within the A community who, largely buy ideas like scout mindset, truth-seeking behaviors, clarifying, being open to changing your minds and clarifying your uncertainties and stuff. So yeah, that's an interesting observation to have. So another question that is like that's burning within the audience is Dushan, do you think folks should start a new organization or help grow an existing one? I really like this question. I'm thinking that starting new organizations often means redoing a lot of basic work that others have already done, which might be a reduction in cost effectiveness. Do you have
I think that's a very good question. I think like not every org needs ops. I think like impact ops and like disclaimer, my wife works at impact ops. I have conflict of interest of every kind. But like there exist organizations like impact ops. I don't know if there are any other in EA, but like globally they exist where you can just like outsource your ops. And if you're like an AI safety scientist with a really good idea that got a little bit of funding, think about not having internal ops. However, not having internal ops does come with some cost, like lack of understanding how your org works is a big cost. And even though PIBBSS is like very small, I think we do benefit a lot from like having ops under our own kind of like control. And so that's like the question of do you outsource ops or not? Should you open new orgs? I think we're still so pre-paradigmatic and have so little understanding of where the problems are that like it's possible that we need many small orgs to start and fail before we find out what's actually worth doing and what'll work. And there's some kind of like
yeah.
benefit to having that. So like US starts a new grant that says only people working on, I don't know, multipolar traps or like
Mhm.
nuclear war and AI combination, right? And like at that point, we will have wished that we had a couple of those existing. And so there's like real reason to have broad number of smaller orgs rather than like um, congeal everything together kind of into big
Yeah.
orgs. Um,
Interesting.
and yeah,
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
generally all for like plurality because I think like we
Yeah.
need that diversity of perspectives. And when you push everyone together, they tend to like group think over time, and it's just hard to be like two different orgs under one roof, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen some questions asking about truth-seeking
Mhm.
behaviors and building Scout Mindset. A quick book to just shout out is just Scout Mindset by Julia Gala. That's a great resource. Maybe just a quick comment on this. My 2 cents, like my intuition on this is, uh, uh, never mind. I lost my train of thought. I'm just gonna go to the next question here. Um, the next question we have here is, how do we evaluate your personal impact in an ops role, especially in an early stage AI safety work?
I think this is really hard. I think like generally because in AI safety we don't know what kind of impact we're looking for even like nothing is measurable, right? Like, is PIBBSS a net positive? It's hard to say. Like, I can make a really solid case from very many directions and stuff, but only in retrospect, once whatever happens, we can look back and say, oh, this was a really good idea, right? And so like I think this is really hard. And holding yourself to like a crazy high standard or something is like really tough. A part of it will have to be like you biting the bullet and saying, a world in which this exists seems safer than a world in which it doesn't, right? And that's like what you can do. Um, what's the impact of ops in that is like I don't know. Part of it is something like if I didn't join PIBBSS would stop existing because Nora, the co-founder, did not have any other ops people lined up. And it was like either I join and we do the project or I don't join and we don't do the project. And it was like a very turbulent time. Like I joined and we didn't have funding to pay salaries to us. And the first few months we were like volunteering until like we got funding to like start being paid for our work. And that's the kind of work you do in AI safety ops. It's like high variance kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can now say counterfactually, all of PIBBSS's impact is mine. Haha, right? Like really nice. But I think this is like really hard in general. Like if I wasn't hired, the second best person would be hired in almost any other role. And
Mhm.
so my only impact is like that little difference, you could say. But I don't know. There's also a little bit of like mind poison in thinking so little of yourself or something. I think like you should say, you know, look honestly at what your organization is doing and claim a part of that as like the effect of good operations. And if you see that like things are not working and you think like you're having a negative impact on that, get better or like hire help or something and try to make that impact as much as you can.
Yeah, a good question segue into is should folks be hiring? Oh, sorry, swap card is going crazy right now for me. How do you maintain? Oh, so sorry. Give me 5 seconds. This happens. Um, oh yeah, there we go. The question here. Could you say more about how to decide between outsourcing and keeping ops in-house? What are the signs that might keep you in that you should switch to in-house ops after contracting for it?
Sure. I think um if you notice that like you're losing time with communicating with the contractors, if you notice that you're trying to do something which requires agility, which your contractors don't have, if you notice that you want someone who can strategically look at your operations, which contractors are not generally motivated to do, you should have ops in like within your org. Um, also like look at the price differentials, right? Like sometimes the thing that you're outsourcing for is done much cheaper when outsourced, like accounting, legal, all of that is like much more effort to hire a lawyer to have full time. Like you almost certainly don't need that until you're much bigger, or doing some very serious like contract signing or something like that.
Mhm.
A lot in your day-to-day work. But for general operations, I think like the bar is somewhere medium. Like if you have several employees, if you notice that like, you know, constantly there's some friction with the outside contractor, that's a sign like you should bring ops a little bit more in and then like only outsource some sub parts.
Mhm. So a good a question to segue into is how do you maintain credibility and value in highly specialized orgs and projects as an ops journalist? And how do you show your potential when applying for jobs in such a new branch?
I think it's like how well can you communicate how much you will do and how little they will need to do once they hire you or something. I think like for PIBBSS in particular, because we were just two people in the very beginning, Nora needed to know that I could like very quickly start doing things completely by myself. And so for me, it was like showcase the 10 years of things I have done and things that I can now do. So in a job application, that's what I would look for. I think like because the field is so young, no one is expecting you to have specifically AI safety generalist ops experience. No one wants that. What they want is like someone with high conscientiousness who is like a doer and a quick learner for things that they don't know. And that's it. I think like what can help if you already have experience, for example, is also having contacts. So I don't know. You want a website? I know a guy who makes websites. I made 10 websites before through him, and it's like super cheap and reliable. That's like useful for any organization that they move to is like the old-fashioned term Rolodex, but like the phone contact book that they bring with me is like useful for any organization I go to. So like have skills that the orgs need, have good attitude towards it, towards like the skills you don't have to learn, and ideally have contacts that you bring with you into the org, and then like showcase those three.
Yeah, just having a portfolio, having a track record, building up the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're down to our last like 5-ish minutes. So if you have questions, keep them coming. I'll try to prioritize like the good ones that are not that are more value adding. I think while we're on the topic of hiring and recruiting, I just want to give a quick I just want to normalize the statement. Rejections means that you're trying hard enough, and you do get rejected quite often in the EA space because roles are so limited, and we really do want the best people taking up space in that way. So rejections means that you're trying hard enough. Don't be surprised if you get rejected by like 20 or 30 organizations if you really care about doing ops. And the best person is very likely to have taken the role, which is a win for impact. So don't feel too down as well. And just a quick circling back, that is value adding, I think, on joining an existing org or starting a new one. Um, my quick 2 cents that I want to say is scrutinize the theory of change of an org for what it is. Every Without a strong theory of change, it might be much more worthwhile to start your own org. So try to scrutinize theory of change and view them as on their merit. So the next question we have is quite a general one, and I think this is like a probably good way to wrap up our conversation, Dušan. Are there any resources that you want to shout out? I know you mentioned like you couldn't think of any books and stuff, but it could be a website that you've like found quite helpful. It could be a coach you worked with, perhaps. It could be like a YouTube lecture series on running operations and stuff. Curious to, yeah, any stuff there.
Mm. I think there is a Slack. Let me take a second and try to find it somewhere in the 10 million tabs that I have open.
Sure.
There we go. It's called
Ops?
ON Community. It's Operations Nation. And Operations Nation is like somewhat invite only, but like you go to their website, you fill in a thing, and I haven't heard of anyone who got turned down. It's like group of people doing operations internationally, and it's pretty good for like asking quick questions to get them quickly answered. So I recommend that if you need an invite, text me on Swapcard. I'll send you like a link to invite you to the community. I didn't use it much, but just like being there and having the ability to ask questions is I think very valuable. Um, and a very broad advice is imposter syndrome is huge in AI safety. I think like in PIBBSS it's especially big because like we get the smartest economist and the smartest biologist and the smartest physicist and the smartest ML person, and they all feel like they all suck in the other three things simultaneously, right? And like it's really hard to like then as an operations person sitting in that room, you're like great at making them meet, but like you're not an expert in any of these things. That's fine, right? Like you're there a little bit to learn, you're there a little bit to be a soundboard, um, and that is fine. But don't take it against yourself. And yeah, like hiring situation, as you mentioned, it's a little bit hard. It's especially hard for like very young people. All organizations want someone with like 50 years of work experience, and you're young, like with no fault of your own. That's fine. Look at other opportunities, as I said, like startup-y, tech ops in big corporations or small orgs. These are all like really good at getting you experience that's relevant and getting experience in the government. I think that's like super undervalued, but like super high impact possibly. If you like care about AI safety and you go get some opsy jobs in governments, can be very big.
Yeah. Also, want to shout out a typical service-oriented waiter job. Being a waiter teaches you to like need to manage under huge
Yeah.
time pressures and doing simultaneous things. I think that's quite underrated. And this is the side I wish I could explore more with you, Dušan, which is like some people have like different opinions on the glamour of like operations roles. It's probably not as glamorous as consultant because you got to roll up your sleeves and get dirty. So do work. Yeah. I triple checked the questions that we have from audience, and I think I left out one good one, and I think it's worth the airtime. Um, could you please describe some concrete examples of day-to-day operations in AI safety you're involved with? It could be task workflow software. So maybe that's a good place that we could like sort of end the conversation at.
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Can you please
Oh,
repeat it a bit louder?
sure. Could you please describe some concrete examples of day-to-day operations in AI safety you're involved with, such as task, workflow, software? Maybe like a 30-second answer to this. Like, yeah.
Sure. I think like a lot of the work goes through Google Sheets, Google Docs. You gotta do that because like you need a lot of people putting in their input very quickly, really well. Different orgs will use Asana or Monday or one of those, and like Slack is where all the operations lives in AI safety. So like a day of work is wake up, check if there are fires. If there are no fires overnight, go through your like things that you need to do. So like most of it is like making sure that all the balls that you're juggling are still in the air. So like, is everyone getting their salaries on time? Is anyone having some emergency that you need to like take care of? Like maybe they are moving and you need to like redo their contract or something like that. And then spend some of the time catching up on like what is your strategic vision. I think like all orgs have to do that now a lot because like every AI safety day moves the whole field for a month in normal circumstances, and so like you have to reevaluate, are we still doing a valuable thing, and like how do I adjust to that. And then yeah, outside communications take up like a third of my day, like talking to different contractors, talking to like people that were talking about hiring, stuff like that. So yeah, that's a little bit of a day in a life. But yeah, happy to talk more during my open hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing I want to flag as well. Dushan's going to have office hours right after this, so have all your burning questions to it. So Dushan, I'm going to throw you for a last word. Any like 30-second last words, like it could be a galvanizing thought for action for folks. Yeah, what would it be?
Uh, think through what to you is the most impact. Like look at what you think is the biggest problem, look at how you think you can contribute to that, and then like really push for that. Look at creative ways to get there. And yeah, like the path will eventually open. It takes resilience, it takes like pushing, but you'll get there. And talk to people along the way. I think that's like really, really worth it for everyone here.
Yeah. Also apply to 80K advising. Actually follow through
Yes.
the application if you're trying to figure out if operations is your best fit thing. Uh, yeah, just a shout out. All right. Thank you so much, Dushan, for your time. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Sue.